Good morning and welcome back for another episode of VIPs in Action, Village Innovating Perinatal Support in Action, brought to you by Rose Breastfeeding here in the Atlanta metro area and myself, Dr. Joanne Michelle Martin of JMM Health Solutions. Today's guest is an amazing guest. I mean, I've said that about all these guests, but they really are amazing, y'all. I'm not even lying. Like I have enjoyed every single moment with every single guest. And today's guest will be no different, I promise you. All right. So today we've got Devin Bailey Nicholas, affectionately known as Divine. Finger snaps. And she is the founder and executive director of the nonprofit organization Community Birth Companion, which was started in 2012 with the goal of lowering infant and maternal mortality rates in St. Landry Parish. Divine is a certified lactation consultant. She is a doula. She is a licensed midwife apprentice and a traditional herbalist. I told y'all she was amazing. She's currently a member of the Louisiana Breastfeeding Coalition Steering Committee, a member of Healthy St. Landry Steering Committee, local ambassador for the National Perinatal Task Force, member of the Community Partners Advisory Subcommittee for the Louisiana Perinatal Quality Collaborative. She serves mothers and families in, I might butcher this name, is it Opelousas?
Opelousas.
Opelousas, Louisiana, where she resides with her husband and her 4 children. First of all, how do you have the bandwidth to be so amazing with 4 kids? Like
I
look,
don't know. I
I got
don't
two and I quit.
know.
I
I
mean,
don't know.
and you just up here with all this amazingness, right? Man.
Oh
Oh, we
goodness.
teach me, okay? Teach me. Well,
I'm tired as we speak. I'm
oh boy,
tired, but I'm
not
pushing.
tired, tired.
But I'm pushing.
Oh man. Well, thank you so much for being here, joining us today. Tell us a little, I mean, gosh, that intro, phenomenal. The things that you do, phenomenal. Tell us a little bit more about you. You're in Louisiana. Tell us a little bit more about the work that you're doing there.
Thank you so much for having me. Yes, Community Birth Companion, which is I always say that's my fifth baby. My my organization, really the community's organization. When I started in 2012, I had recently, like maybe like a few months before then, had become a doula. So I was
Hmm.
trained as a doula, and I remember telling my trainer, Miss Shafia Monroe, I said, "Man, I have these babies. I don't have a car. How am I going to do this work?" And she said, "Become a resource for your community, where you can create things where they can come to you until you can get up and go."
Hmm.
And so one of the first things I did when I came back to Opelousas and to put my foot on the ground was just basically I called the local hospital. I called all these places and institutions that were supposed to be working on infant and maternal mortality, and where women were going to birth their babies, and say, "Hey, I'm organizing a Save the Babies lunch and learn. Let's all come together. Let's figure out what we all are doing here, and just bring attention to this issue that was affecting Black women." And so that was like my first event that I did, and from then we just kind of hit the ball running. We do breastfeeding support groups, where we do doula support. And because of the Rose VIP cohort and grant, we've been able to add on to our services. And now we're doing monthly virtual community childbirth education, which has been huge for us.
Wonderful. That's awesome. Man, that's a lot. That's a big responsibility too, right?
Yes.
To become the go-to for your community. So what things I mean, I don't know about Opelousas. This is the first time. Like my Louisiana geography is a little limited. I almost moved to Monroe.
Okay, that's
Almost.
north. That's north.
That's north. I got that
Right.
part. And I know where New Orleans is. I
Right.
got
Right.
those two.
So
So tell me a little bit about your community.
right.
What are the typical birth outcomes like there? You know, cesarean section rate, mortality rate. Are they very high in that area?
Yes, so Louisiana, period, ranks one of the highest in the country for
Wow.
C-sections, term births. March of Dimes usually gives us about a D or F for preterm births with their report card. And St. Landry Parish really is not any different. We're Southwest Louisiana. So if you think of New Orleans, it's further down into the boot in the Southeast. And
Hmm.
we're going more west. So like
Hmm.
midline, we're not up there where Monroe is. So we're in the
Hmm.
middle kind of. Um, our particular community, Opelousas, is about 74% African American. The community itself has about 40% of people in general living under the poverty line. We have one hospital. That hospital is now baby friendly, but we do range, the last I checked, between 40 and 50% cesarean rate. So
Wow.
that means, and the doctors do not do VBACs there. So that means if I walk in there and you walk in there, to have a baby, one of us is going to get a cesarean. And then that also means if I have no other place to birth, that if I received a cesarean and I have to go back to that hospital, I have no other choice but to have another cesarean. So
Yeah.
these type of things increase the rates of maternal mortality or morbidity, where in which a woman may die or have some long-term health issues because of repeat cesareans. And it's just serious. And we have had for a while a gap in resources. And as a grassroots, smaller organization, we've tried to fill those gaps so we can have some type of support for families to reach out to.
Hmm. Wow, that is very high. I mean, when you talk about a 50% cesarean rate, and you think, I think the thing that baffles me is when we think of the United States as an industrialized nation, as a first world nation, and then we look at the rates in some of our communities and how astronomical they are. And then we look at some of the so-called third world countries who are doing great, by the way. They're doing great. It kind of begs the question, what's really happening, because there's a discrepancy somewhere.
Yes.
There's a discrepancy somewhere. So you guys have one hospital, you guys have these extremely high rates. Where do we feel the discrepancy is lying? Is it lack of education? Is it that there are not enough resources? Is it that there are resources but they're not getting to the people that need them? Where do you feel like that lack of communication is?
So, in this particular area that would be considered rural, we also know that we don't have any public transportation. And so people have to have options, they got to be able to get to those options. So if my closest hospital, and I'm not sure if I'm going to have a ride anywhere else, I'm going to go to this particular hospital. Um, that being said, some of the doctors are saying that clients come in saying they want to have a cesarean or they want to be induced. And a lot of times inductions can lead, even though you may not be planning it, may lead to a cesarean.
Hmm.
Also, a lot of people were not educated or just have become a little bit more knowledgeable within the last couple of years about doulas, about birth support.
Hmm.
And even though we do have certified professional midwives, home birth midwives, the accessibility to that as far as um, cost, people even thinking it's an option. A lot of folks don't know their options in birth, and if that communication is not happening, so it's education on both sides. Because if you have physicians that feel like, well, people are asking to be induced, and people are asking to have the C-section, have their baby born on a certain date. Well, hey, now you're not supposed to do that. ACOG has told us, if it has to be a reason for the
Yeah.
cesarean. You can't
Yeah.
just say that. But we can always put little red flags up through the prenatal care that can cause it to be a reason. So I don't want to just go straight, bashing our physicians, because Black folk are smart people. We're not an ignorant people, but we
Hmm.
have to remind ourselves to be assertive in that space,
Yeah.
in that doctor's office, because a lot of times we're leaving out of that doctor's office and we don't know what we just heard. We don't have a good understanding, or we understand but don't feel the comfortability to kind of push back on that, ask some questions about that. And that's what we're noticing. The language in
Yeah.
which we are able to advocate for ourselves is seriously lacking.
Hmm. I mean, I agree with you. I'm a healthcare provider, and one of the things that you learn as a healthcare provider is, you ask people, you read back and have them confirm. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
this is whether you're communicating with another healthcare provider. So, you have to read information back to them. They have to verbalize that they understood. And it's no different with patients, right? So, if I'm giving you this whole spiel, I'm going to then turn around and say, does that make sense? Did you understand that? Can you repeat to me what I just said? Because if they can't repeat it, if they can't explain it, then obviously they didn't understand it. And at least in that way, we can catch it before
Right.
they leave out so that we know that they understood what was said. They understood the information that was shared. And I think, especially with something as important as pregnancy, where if we're not taking the right steps, if we're not caring for individuals as we should, that can lead to issues down the road. Like we mentioned, like you mentioned before, maternal mortality rates are pretty high. Then we have the morbidity rate. So people are like, oh, but they didn't die, so life is good. No, but then they've
No.
got all these issues,
Right.
after the
Right.
fact, many of which are completely preventable.
Hmm.
Completely. Like there is absolutely no reason why, again, in an industrialized nation such as ours, that many
Exactly.
of the things that are occurring with regards to, maternity rates and birth and all these things are happening, but they are. And it's
Yes.
not to continue to beat this issue with a stick, but we have to continue to keep the
Yes.
dialogue open, because in one area it might be a race issue, in another area it could be a resource issue. The issue may not be the same everywhere, but
Right.
obviously there are discrepancies, and those are the things
Yes.
that we truly need to highlight. So with regards to what you are doing within your community, being a resource, you said that you mentioned that you guys are rural. Transportation is one of your bigger issues. What other issues have you noticed in trying to work with families and trying to work with women? What other issues have you noticed in and around your community that need to be addressed in
Lack
terms
of
of like
collaboration.
infrastructure and stuff like that too?
Sometimes it's a lack of collaboration. Sometimes it's a lack of, and I know they're trying to do that as far as just infrastructure of the city to make it more walkable, right?
Hmm.
If and that leads to a whole bunch of things when the community is more walkable because you have more access to have some good physical activity if we're talking about the overall health
Yeah.
of the community and things of that sort. Also, first food deserts that has been talked about as far as breastfeeding, but also deserts in which we don't have good food. So you
Hmm.
have pockets of the population who are not breastfeeding, so the baby isn't getting that good first food. And
Hmm.
then we have the adults, those who can buy and purchase food, the accessibility, because we have farms and things here, but we still are going to the fast food areas and things like that. So equipping our local farmers market to be more robust, that would
Hmm.
be awesome, and make sure that's accessible to those of our families that's receiving WIC and food stamps. And
Hmm.
so you have to go pretty much out of town into another city to go to those more um how do I say, those spaces that's giving more organic foods or more fresh foods. And
Hmm.
so equipping and educating our people also that, well, do we have enough room in our yard to start our own little garden? What
Hmm.
can I grow myself? And I think those are things that I often say, it's not so much that we have to educate because our people don't know. A lot of times we have to remind our people of the
People.
resourcefulness we already have as a people, because at one time we wasn't allowed in their hospitals. And
Hmm.
what did we do then? How did we function within each other to do this work and communicate with each other? And we've lost some of that knowledge and that wisdom that we would give each other as expecting families, as the village. And
Hmm.
because we've kind of given all our power in one space, when those that we've given that power to don't treat us the way we feel like we need to be treated, we feeling kind of lost. So
Hmm.
it's reclaiming that power and also forcing the issue of collaboration.
Hmm.
And what we've been doing, I would say pretty good with Community Birth Companion, is we really push each time we have a client. who is working with a physician, especially that we were doing it a little bit better before COVID. COVID kind of put some things down. We really try to go to at least one prenatal visit with that client to see and meet their doctor.
Hmm.
Hey, we're the doula, was just sitting back with a notepad, encouraging the client to ask those questions that they asked us that we said, oh, you need to ask your doctor, and reminding them to keep a notebook on them, helping them use language and script to get the information that they need. And also letting the doctor know, when we say collaboration, I don't mean I'm going to sit at the table with the doctor and go through everything with him about this client, but at least him knowing that I'm on the birth team. I'm essential to this team, and we're being proactive
Hmm.
in this client's care, this woman's care. And that has been something that has been working with us with a few physicians. We would love to have more physicians, but with a
Yeah.
few physicians, I'm going to take my W where I can.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And that's been good. So we have on our as contractors with Community Birth Companion, we have Miss Charlotte Goodall, who's an evidence-based birth instructor, who is a certified professional midwife and licensed midwife for the state of Louisiana. And we have Yvonne Laverne Prudhomme, who is an IBCLC. And both of these women, Black women, are one of I want to say Yvonne is the one of 4 or 5 Black IBCLCs in the state, and Miss Charlotte is one of 4 Black CPM, certified professional midwives, in the state of Louisiana. So we're really blessed to have these women work with us and act as people we can, go to for advice and information for working with our clients. And we try to get that. We keep saying it's a circle of care, so our mamas don't feel like they being left out. We
Hmm.
can refer them to someone in that circle, and we're all talking to each other, or we all have a good relationship with each other, where the mama knows that she's not out there in the cold, that
Yeah.
she has some people to turn to.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I was going to ask about midwives too, because if the rates are so high for the cesareans, and we're getting so many inductions even when they're not necessary, in particular, how well are midwives being utilized? Are there a lot of midwifery practices in the area? And what about home birth midwifery?
It needs to be utilized more seriously. And especially during COVID, we had a lot more families say, hey, I may not want to give birth in the hospital, but they were not prepared mentally and financially for what that difference is.
Hmm.
Because as it stands right now, it's not that midwives don't take insurance, it's that a lot of insurance companies don't cover out of hospital birth. So
Yeah.
that's something that it's only so much we can say. The consumer does on one end have to say, hey, if I'm paying for this insurance, I think you should cover all options of birth, because
Hmm.
all options of birth is legal in Louisiana. Hospital, birth center, home birth midwives, those are all legal in the state of Louisiana. And so these insurance companies we need to put their feet to the fire and say you should
Hmm.
be covering these services, because for a lot of people it is out of pocket. So if you're in that 7th or 8th month of pregnancy, and then you're like, boom, COVID, but how do I get the funds now to pay for a midwife? And so a lot of people also are not educated or do not know the different options that they can have with a midwife. A
Hmm.
midwife can do your prenatal care, and then you can still birth in the hospital if that's the case. If you want to, just like, I don't want to go back and forth into that doctor's office during COVID. I
Hmm.
want somebody to come in my home and do care. You can have a midwife do that, and then they can, sure, hey, when it's about time, 36, 37 weeks or so, you're handed off to the doctor,
Hospital. Hmm.
into the hospital. So there are different ways in which we need to utilize our midwives more. That isn't just like, oh, I need them to catch the baby. It's so
Right.
many ways in which they are resources. We do have 2 Black midwives that services this area currently, and we do have a birthing center in the Lafayette Broussard area. Lafayette is about 30 minutes or so away from
Okay.
Opelousas. So um, it's not too far, but again, folks being educated on their options. And we do need to have more collaboration between um, the hospital and our certified professional midwives, as well as our nurse midwives, because It's the collaboration that makes home birth so awesome. What
Mm-hmm.
makes home birth so awesome is because we supposed to be able to birth mother's birth in an area that's not far from the hospital for if any reason they need to go to the hospital.
Right.
We have good roads. We're living in the United States that
Mm-hmm.
she can then transfer, and
Can
that we
transfer
want that
easily.
transfer to be seamless. And that's what
Mm-hmm.
makes things, that she's protected and the baby is protected all around.
Mm-hmm.
So we would love for our physicians to see our midwives as an asset and as part of community workers as well. And that's what we're doing with Community Birth Companion. We really try to let them know, like, hey, it doesn't matter. We're here to help you help help the client. We working
Right.
together. It's not nothing about competition. We're all working together. And also knowing that every woman has a distinct set of needs, and individualized care should be something we're pushing for. And there's it's some
Yes.
mamas that need to be in that hospital, and it's some mamas that really are going to benefit the most of being at a hospital birth. Let's work together to identify those families, and so we can really put them in an area that's going to make sure that they birth in a safe space.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Absolutely agreed. Um, with regards to with regards to COVID and everything that has happened in the last several months, right? We've had to pivot to virtual. How have you found that pivot to be? How have you found people to utilize those services? Was it a struggle? Did you find that people were a little bit more hesitant? Did you find that people maybe didn't have the infrastructure in place in terms of internet since it is more rural? How have you found that transition to be? And now that you guys are kind of in the midst of it for at least a few months now, have you found it more beneficial in its ability to reach more people?
Well, let me tell you this. When it seemed like everything really was going virtual, we end up having like two hurricanes.
Oh no.
And so it was one of those things where everybody wanted everything to be online, and it was like, yo, it's people power out. You know, I'll put it to you like this. Every region has its distinct set of needs and issues. And at one point I was just like, y'all not taking into the account of the needs that we have at this moment. So it was certain things we couldn't do virtual. So when we were doing, for instance, we always do an annual pregnancy and breastfeeding fair. And so when COVID hit, we already knew that we were going to, if we wasn't going to be able to do the fair where we have booths and everything. So our plan was we're going to have to do pass out bags or, whatever. So then the hurricane hit, and we knew that we had to get these essential items to parents. There was no way at that time that we were going to be able to do a Zoom call with just some information and, hey, we're going to mail you your grab bags or whatever. There was no
Mhm.
way we had to do that. We had to adapt to our particular situation. And so blessed to have a woman owned, black owned boutique, the community based boutique, who was like, yo, y'all can bring y'all stuff here and we can have people line up and their cars can come past. And we did a grab and go.
Okay.
And so people came up, and we handed them their bag. They had their snack. We had a manual breast pump. We had some diapers, just some essential things for mamas who were pregnant or just had their baby. And so in that, we were able then to tell them, we're going to have some online things coming up. So we
Hmm.
still need some sort of communication, because word of mouth is still the best. In our
Yes.
area, word of mouth is still the best. And then to say, okay, from that word of mouth, we're going to be doing something online when we're up and running and able to do so. So
Hmm.
have people been wanting it? Definitely. But people are also online and zoomed out. They
Hmm.
are. At this time, when we do online things, what I have seen to be a beautiful thing about it is that folks that may not even be from our area are benefiting. So they might be like, okay, I missed the one. We do monthly breastfeeding support groups, which is we call our Cafe Olay, and we're the Opelousas Cafe Olay Circle. It's a statewide circle for breastfeeding moms and families of color. And so I have mamas that may be from all over the state of Louisiana and our particular area. So that has been awesome. And that's something that we're also seeing with our childbirth education. Our childbirth education classes, we're seeing mamas from all over, and we're also seeing people who are birth workers who want to continue their education and working with their clients come to these childbirth education classes. So that has been good too, because we need that continued education in this world. Just navigating the space. What are moms supposed to be learning now? What questions do they have? So that's been really good. Um, but yeah, people are kind of, it's not that they don't want, but they're trying to figure out their children's schooling. Sometimes, depending on if there's been an outbreak or what have you, kids can be in school, the kids cannot be in school. So all of
Hmm.
this is put on the parents, and we understand that we're trying to be, it's forcing us to be super flexible.
Yeah.
It really is.
Hmm. And so, as a recipient of the grant from Rose Breastfeeding with for this VIPs cohort, how have you been able to utilize those funds within your community? I mean, you guys have got a lot on your shoulders between the weather and COVID and some infrastructural deficits. You guys have surely got a lot, but it seems like you guys are still fighting. You guys are still
Still going.
pushing through, and I love that. I think that that is phenomenal. And for anyone hearing this that are in areas where they're coming up with certain struggles. Maybe it's, you're not in the Gulf, you're not getting hurricanes, but maybe you're in the Northeast now and you're getting snowstorms, right?
Right,
Maybe
right.
you're in a rural area where the internet is not reliable. I mean, if it looks like it's going to rain, the internet cuts out. You just
Right.
won't. I mean,
Right, right,
it might
right,
just look like it's going to rain. It might not
right.
even rain, but your internet is like, okay, bye. So,
Right.
I mean, would it, this is great for those people too who are trying to figure out other ways to pivot and other ways to be able to serve moms. But how have you been able to utilize that grant as a resource now for those within your community?
What Rose has allowed us to do, and I'm so grateful for it, and I have never come across a grant like this where it's also given us training, especially
Hmm.
for us grassroots organizations. We're not these large organizations, so they're also giving us training on how to work our infrastructure and then be able to show other people who may be giving us bigger grants, or who can give us bigger grants, like,
Yeah.
look, this is how we reporting how our breastfeeding classes or our childbirth education classes are going. They're teaching us how to report this, how to show our results of the work that we're doing.
Hmm.
Also, we were able to get technology, some updated iPads, the tablets for our workers, for those who are leading our classes.
Hmm.
Also supplies, because we are still doing home visits. We are still doing home visits for our moms, not as much as we used to, but we are still touching base with them. So that allows us to have PPE, um masks, gloves, and things of that sort. Cameras that I'm on this phone with, and so you can see me clearly, right? So it's not fuzzy and things like that. We were not able at all to be like, if money came around, we were like, okay, we got to buy diapers.
Hmm.
We did not have that where we could be like, well, let's buy this tech. And so
Yeah.
it's forced us to be it's allowed us to be able to do that, headphones, things like that. So we have everything in the background that would allow us to connect with the client.
Yeah.
Even having our phones, even if they can't get on here, can we text them? Are we
Hmm.
on using Facebook Messenger? Are we using the WhatsApp? All these different ways in which we can see and talk to them and try to get our communication with them. And that's been awesome. And it's really has pushed us to be in an area where we can open up for other things, increase capacity in other ways. So it's
Hmm.
really been a blessing for us.
That is awesome. I mean, I love your strength. I love your
Thank
resilience. Because most people would have thrown in the towel. Like how are you getting hit by COVID and two hurricanes in the same year? Like most people have never endured a hurricane. Like
it's
a bad storm is too much for them. Like, right? So I mean, like to have to go through that, but still to recognize, well, when the hurricane is over, we still got work to do.
You still got work. The babies are still
Babies,
coming.
babies, and the babies aren't saying, well, you know what? There is a hurricane. We're
Right.
just gonna stay put. The babies are like, what? There's action. I want to come out now.
Yes, and it's been crazy. One of our major challenges that we had once COVID hit was that all our hospitals here and locally basically said our doulas cannot come in.
Mhm.
And so the way in which we have worked and that has kept costs low is that we would have women who are already trained as doulas to, hey, if you got some time, can you, we want to pay you. But for mothers who are on WIC or on food stamps, Medicaid, they will either have a sliding scale or would not have to pay for that doula. So if we can pay that doula a lower amount than they would generally have, but they got some time to take our community birth companion mamas. Well, with COVID, not only is it's not just, oh, you're not essential, is that, well, you're not even personnel of the hospital, so we don't have
Mhm.
to let you in unless you're going to be a visitor. But
Mhm.
we don't want to ever put a mama in a position where she has to pick between her partner,
Yeah.
grandmother, or whatever, and us. So that has created a barrier. And what we have been doing is I was writing all the hospitals, like, hey, we're essential personnel. We need to be in there. That's something really dear to my heart that I've been very worried about, because sometimes our families talk strong when we there. Just us
Mhm.
being there
Mhm.
allows them to advocate for themselves,
Mhm.
just our presence. And it it does worry me, even though I know that everybody in the hospital is trying to do their best to make sure that the spread of COVID, it doesn't, wow out. Yeah, I totally understand that. But we had quite a few mamas who were expecting to have somebody with them,
Yeah.
and we could not go. So we're just navigating how to still be present with them, talking to them over and over again, giving them different modalities to use to advocate for themselves, like the brain model, talking about benefits and risks and alternatives and what have you. So um that has been one of our major challenges with our organization, because we really push that community birth companion, that we're their
Mhm.
birth companions, and that
Yeah.
so that has hurt us.
That's amazing though. That you guys are still trying. I mean, again, resilience. That's all I see. Resilience, because no matter what's thrown at you, you're like, okay, this is a tough one, but we're gonna find a way
Right, we
around
got.
this. Have you guys been offering any virtual doula services to your families?
Yes, but I'll tell you like this. It seemed more like things that we've been doing, right? Like
Hmm.
what we would do until we got to the hospital,
Right.
Hey, we're on our way, or are you seeing any discharge, or remember the um labor position that we taught you the other day? Are you doing hands and knees? Da 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 da. So those type of things we are doing. And sometimes we are just downstairs while, until somebody can swap out and say, an auntie or a sister can swap out, and we can go in and just and see the mama and let them know, hey, we was here, we're downstairs. And they may be kicking us out in a few. But that's how we've been doing it. And so and we know some people have been a little bit hesitant too to reach out for services because of COVID, because
Yeah.
people are really looking for doulas to be hands-on. So
Hmm.
if you now are not hands-on, I think that's what has really helped with the childbirth education classes.
Yeah.
So then that's like, well, then if I can't have a doula come with me, I want to be educated, and this has
Yeah.
really been right on time for us to be able to provide that.
That's awesome. Well, what do you see in the future? What's the future for the community companions? What do you guys envision? We're in
Yeah.
2021. We
Yes.
realize that COVID may or may not decide that it wants to go, but we're like, you know what? That's fine. You do what you will, because we're gonna do us. So what are you guys planning for this year and beyond, for your community, for your moms?
The vision this year is really to have a facility, to have a space where we can have our essential items for our clients to come past, and diapers, bottles, things of that sort. Because even though it's COVID, because we are a smaller town, a lot of our groups, unless it was a big event, we had smaller groups anyway. And
Hmm.
so we can still do our social distancing right now. my office is like a local coffee shop or like a little room in my home. So we would really love our pushes to get something donated to us locally where we can have a safe space where mamas can come, and for us to at least have a dry space to keep our supplies, because like we
Mhm.
had a lot of leaking and everything, because of the storm. And so also, is to make sure that we invest in our birth workers, that we continue with our continuing education, and supporting our local midwives and things of that sort. That's the goal. Our community birth companion wants to have a space, wants to
Mhm.
be, we're already seen in the work that we do, but it's time to have a physical space so they can knock on the door and say, hey, I know you're right there. And um and and, and that's really gonna give me, I'll be very happy when that happens, because it means something to the community when they can see a sign.
Mhm.
Especially if you've already been doing the work, you know what I'm saying? It's like we did this, and I want to show them that we did it, because I can't do none of this stuff without the mamas and their families, without the local organizations and businesses that have really invested in us. I have to also shout out along in a also with Rose, evidence-based birth,
Yeah.
healthy blue. They have been people who have been consistently supporting us as a small organization. We wouldn't be able to do what we're doing now without that
Mhm.
said support.
Yeah, and as you said, evidence-based birth. I love Dr. Rebecca Decker. She is doing some amazing work
Yes,
in the perinatal
yes,
spaces. If you guys have not listened to the Evidence Birth podcast, it is
yes,
an absolute treat. And Rebecca is definitely a leader within the birthing community. So thank you,
yes,
Rebecca, for all that you're doing. Well,
yes,
I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you sharing your time with me and just being able to share this space with you. I hope some of this resilience rubs off, because you are phenomenal. You are
thank
absolutely
you.
phenomenal. Um, Keep reaching those moms. Keep working. I know sometimes it might seem like stuff is just pushing you down, but stay strong. I mean, you are getting the word out, and we're hoping that with these videos being posted, with this information being shared, with us being able to highlight all that you're doing, that we can spread the word, far and wide about what you're doing in your community, and then what you're able to do beyond that now, because
Yes.
now we've got Zoom. I mean, for what it's worth, it is very helpful. So,
Yeah,
you may
yeah,
be able to reach moms now who may not be in Opelousas, but maybe somewhere else, and saying, you know what? I'm in a rural area too, and we have
yeah.
nobody. Can I
Right.
use you as our resource?
Yes,
I
yes,
love
yes.
what you're doing where you are. Or you might see somebody who's in a rural area saying, we've been struggling trying to do what you're doing.
Mhm.
We've not yet been able to achieve it. Can we partner with you? Can we
Right.
bring what you're doing to another community? So just always remember, right now there are people that are going to be looking to you as an icon. There are going to be people that are
Mhm.
looking to you as, because you've done it, and you've done it successfully, right? Look, you got to take the wins. Didn't you just say
Yeah, 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 I gotta take my W when I can.
that? Take it. You got to take it, right? I mean, because you have now become a leader in this community, in this space. And that is a beautiful thing. That is a beautiful thing. So, how can people reach you, learn more about what you're doing, um,
Yes.
reach out for services, connect, collaborate? How can people get in touch with you?
Please go to communitybirthcompanion.org. That's .org. We're also on Facebook and Instagram. Instagram at Community Birth Companion, and on Facebook, Community Birth Companion. So in those spaces, definitely connect with us. Send us a message, a DM. If you find it in your heart that you want to donate, if you go to our webpage, we do have a donate button. For it, we're always needing something, because our families are always needing something. We
Hmm.
always want to make that known, even when we talk to our doctors. This is not a want, this is a
Hmm.
need. Our families need to be birthing in safe spaces, and they need to make sure that they have options in their birthing capacity. So, yes, check me out there. I also can be seen on at Divine Birth Wisdom Instagram. That's my other page in which I do my birth work and my herbalism and all that good stuff. So, yeah, check us out.
Well, we need to talk about that, because let me tell you, I grew up on an island. So I knew about plants as a kid, and you know,
Mm.
my roommate in college, I would never forget. She found essential oils. Like I always had oil. She's like, what is this? She used to get, what is this voodoo thing you're doing? I'm like, no, these are my oils. I said, then meanwhile, this is like 20 years ago. So she was
Right,
like,
right.
well, what is this for? I'm like, oh, well, my grandma used to use this for this, and my mommy uses this for this, and I got all the oils, right? And so she just had her own child 4 years ago, and she started using, I think it was either DoTerra or Young Living,
Uh-huh.
and she tagged me in a post. She says, you know, I'm using these, but I know who the person was that turned me on to essential oils. I was like, because those things existed way back when. They
Yeah,
weren't
yeah.
brand named, you know,
Right, right.
but we knew they worked. And so I
Oh
mean, I would
yeah.
love to have the conversation with you on all things
Yes.
plants and all that
Yes.
good stuff.
Oh yes, I love you. Just talking to me, you feeding my spirit. We're gonna have to do it and
Mhm.
talk plants. Yes, we
Yes,
gotta
ma'am.
do it.
Yes, ma'am. Well, thank you so much for being a part of this. Guys,
Thank
please,
you.
please, please check her out. Instagram, the website, Facebook, for all your information. Those of you in Louisiana, you have a dime. You have, oh my God, she is amazing, y'all. She is amazing. So please check her out. And for those of you who are watching this, please continue to tune in to these amazing interviews that we will continue to be having as we continue to talk about all the topics, as you can see, that are not affecting just one area in our nation, but are affecting different neighborhoods and different regions, and how these amazing perinatal professionals are handling the COVID crisis and what they're doing to not only amplify the issues within their community, but what they're doing to address them, what they're doing to help moms and help families and help babies. All right, guys. So thank you again for another amazing episode of VIPs in Action. Until next time, we'll see you.